Hey guys, welcome to our resume and profile branding personal profile branding workshop. So today we have our speaker Daniel here that he's going to guide us through how we're gonna make a good resume or like what kind of experience you can put on your resume. And yeah, I will hand it over to Daniel and I hope you guys enjoy our workshop today.
Great. Thank you, Macy. All right. I should be sharing my screen. Can people just like quickly let me know? Can people see my screen? I just want to make sure we can see things in the chat. That's also a good test. Can people that are viewing right now see my screen? Let's see. Oh, hopefully. Okay, I'll look at my comments. Okay, great. I think we're good to go. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. This is, at least for me, morning. I'm here in California, so it's great to see you all and be with you virtually. This is really exciting how we can connect like this. And oh, great! Thanks for confirming, Devraj, Sarthak. I'm so glad that you guys can see, and thanks for confirming. So welcome. Yeah, say hi in the chat. Really glad that you're here. Really glad to be here. But let's go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about primarily two main things, resume and LinkedIn. And we're going to get into all sorts of things. We're going to talk about how to craft your resume, how to network, like even what to say during your initial conversations. So all that will come to play during today's workshop. So yeah, let's start with a quick intro about me. So first of all, I'm based in the U.S. So a lot of my information is based on sort of US best practices. So in other words, there might be some different based on where you are, around the world. I know a lot of us here are from India. Um, just take my concepts and just understand that a lot of it applies to the US. And what I want you to do is sort of think about how the best practices are happening in the US and take that and apply them to how you operate in your culture. And whether it's India, whether it's other parts of the US, I just want to be clear about that advice that I'm going to give you some very specific research, and I think it applies everywhere. But I just want to let you know that some of the examples we're going to be doing today, primarily based on US, which I think is going to be really helpful. So real quick, more about me. I studied at the University of California, Berkeley, at the Berkeley Haas. So in other words, the Haas School of Business. I graduated in the class of 2018, so not too long ago. I was a student. It feels like recently, but I feel like I'm getting older. So I know we have a lot of students now. Anyway, recent student here. While I was there, I was a co-founder of Next Gen Consulting, so a consulting group that worked with startups, local nonprofits, and even private companies, just helping them with things like marketing strategy and how to do data analysis in a better way. So that was a fun experience. We're going to talk a little bit later about how to leverage your own experience at school. So just keep that in mind. I did have some experience that I leveraged as well. I also worked in Silicon Valley. This is sort of the technology industry. I was a financial analyst at Maxim Integrated. So again, a lot of my experience comes from being in this environment here in Silicon Valley. Other than that, I currently work as a senior financial analyst at Kaiser Permanente. For those of you that aren't familiar, this is basically one of the largest healthcare systems in the United States, and there's a ton. It's a company that's known for having a lot of data for patients to have the best outcomes. So if you can imagine a system where there's many different healthcare providers, Kaiser is trying to be the one that is unifying everything, so that way it's really easy for the patient to see their doctor while also going to see the specialist and deal with insurance at the same time. Other than that, I really love karaoke, chess, and road trips. And when I say road trips, I mean this might be more of an American thing or a United States thing, but the idea that you just go in your car and you travel to different cities in one kind of consecutive, back-to-back week. So, for example, our most recent trip was we took 2 weeks and we drove all the way up from California up along the ocean towards a state called Washington, and then back down. And along the way, we're camping, we're enjoying all the different local restaurants. It's really fun. So does anybody in the chat can anybody just let me know do we have any karaoke lovers or any chess lovers? I don't know how we would be able to combine the two, but that one day we will find a way to do karaoke and chess at the same time. But yeah, just let me know in the chat. I just like to see anybody out there that plays chess, especially. Oh, I see. I see. Macy likes karaoke. Good. Yes, that's one day they'll figure out how to do like a virtual karaoke, because these days it's hard to do in-person karaoke. We'll figure out how to do it. All right. Other than that, just more that you should know about me is that I teach these workshops. I teach about 15 or even 20 different topics. I usually specialize in Excel, so I teach a different different portfolio of Excel from beginner to expert. And I also teach things like PowerPoint, how to create things like what you're seeing right now. Today we're going to be talking about LinkedIn and resume, business communication. I teach all sorts of topics. So feel free to contact me. My contact information is right here below. I'm happy to do these workshops just because I really enjoy teaching. And ideally, what I'm able to do as well is sort of live stream here on Twitch. So every Sunday afternoon, at least in California, I stream topics just like this. It'll feel like one day we'll do Excel, one day we'll do data analysis, one day we'll do resume help. So every Sunday afternoon, which I think is going to be like a Monday morning for you all, if you do want to sort of follow me to get notified when I do topics like this, feel free to just follow me. My link is actually here below. So actually, what I want to pause and do is just call attention to this link down here, okay? So I want everybody to just real quick um, go ahead and just click on this link or type it in. This will get you the link for today's material as well as previous material, and also my like how to contact me via email and all that stuff. I'll just quickly show that. And Nandandi, I'm glad. Yeah, chess. Good. Yeah, good vibes for chess. I really like that. I'm glad. I think chess is bigger in other parts of the world. I was hoping that chess would be popular in America, but not really. It's there, but I'm glad it's popular. Hopefully, where you guys are at. Okay, so let's go ahead and yeah, I'm just gonna click on this link, but you can type it. I want everybody to just quickly type it so that way it's in your I don't know in your browser, and you don't need to follow along. But here's what it's gonna look like when you click on this. It'll take you to, I believe, not quite that one. It'll take you to this link here. And what you're going to want to do for today's course materials, just go ahead and click on this big button that's kind of jumping at you. If you want to follow me on Twitch, again, to get notified when I'm online and maybe you feel like learning something new or whatever, just want to stop by and say hello, you can click this link and follow me there for my Twitch. And other than that, I do have a newsletter that I'm trying to put together, still in the beginning stages. So feel free to subscribe there. And of course, my LinkedIn is here if you want to add me on LinkedIn, which we will be doing later. But anyway, just so you know, my LinkedIn link is here, as well as my email address is all here at that link. So again, this link is down here. It'll be at the bottom at every slide, so you won't lose it. But just have it ready to go now is my recommendation. Okay. So in other words, let's kind of look at sort of what it looks like when you click on that button. Let me kind of pull it up here. So let's see. I'm gonna go again. I'm just kind of being slow on purpose so that way we can see it all together. So I'm going to type in that link tree, and then here's how to get today's material. You're gonna click on this button, and then you'll notice your view might be a little different, but you're gonna look at just today's date. So you'll notice that this is essentially the workshop that we're going to be going for today. It's dated for today. Just go ahead and click on that folder, and then feel free at whatever point in time you can download this thing. So what I do recommend is you don't need to follow along. So don't feel the need to have a PowerPoint open. Just be here and present. Just enjoy from what I'm presenting. Look at the screen in front of you. Don't feel like you have to follow along. And I'll take you through the rest. Okay. I just want you to have this for your future reference, because people ask me all the time, a copy of the slide deck, and I just want to make sure that you have it up front. So if you have any questions about how to get that, just feel free to ask me now, or at any point, just type it in the chat. Okay. So that's where today's material is. Okay. I think we can go ahead and get started, or at least continue here. So here's our agenda for today. First, we're going to sort of work on our resume. I'm gonna give you some science-based, or at least evidence-based approaches to crafting your resume. So that'll be the first thing that we do today. And then secondly, we're going to go over sort of tips for networking on LinkedIn. So I'm going to give you sort of how to network with folks and also a little bit about brand. I want to give you a little bit of understanding about how you can think about your own brand while you're kind of having a presence on all your social media platforms. So with that in mind, I want to kind of quickly talk about how to make the most of this workshop. Um, so I'm gonna, I'm a very upbeat person. I think working with Macy a little bit already in some prior work, I'm very positive, very energetic. So I invite that to, that same energy from you all. Okay, this is, in my mind, learning should be fun. It should be interactive. It should be engaging. You guys are all doing a great job so far. I love how everyone's using the chat. So just for you personally, here's how to make the most of this workshop. Okay, I like to think about this as a dance floor of sorts. Okay, so I don't know. Think about, pre-COVID. Okay, usually not these days. Uh, you don't have to admit all the stuff and crazy things that you're doing these days. But imagine pre-COVID. Okay, when I come to a party or a dance floor or some sort of event, sometimes there's a dance floor there, right? Okay, and a lot of times the dance floor will be either two things. It'll be completely empty, sort of, and it'll look something like this, right? It'll be completely empty, or on the other hand, it'll be fully crowded. All sorts of people are in there. Everyone's having a great time. The music is blasting. Nobody knows what they're doing, but at least everyone's having a good time, and it's a crowded dance floor. So I'm going to ask you a quick question, okay? And this is for your own benefit. Which dance floor would be more memorable? An empty dance floor or a crowded dance floor? And feel free to type it in the chat. I love seeing this engagement. That's kind of proving the point. But the idea is this: if you're going to put yourself out there and type in the chat, which you should do, it's almost like you're taking a little bit of a risk. You're kind of getting out there and you're involving yourself. And what I'm what I'm suggesting is that when people have a crowded dance floor, it's going to be more memorable. It's going to be more fun, and everybody's going to be having a good time with the energy from each other. Yes, everyone is on the same page. Yes, Devraj is there. Nanandi, yeah, crowded. Macy, yeah, it depends if you're social or antisocial. Uh, but I want to suggest to you all that having a crowded dance floor is the most fun. So what does that mean for you? Um, Basically, use the chat, actually do the exercise that we're about to do. Ask all sorts of questions, and most importantly, have fun. This is designed to be a fun exercise and a fun workshop, so that way you can actually get the most and learn from each other. So, wow, you guys are great. Thanks for all participating. YouTube seems to be a really popular platform and a really good way, pretty smooth way to interact. I'm so glad to be interacting with you all. Okay, so let's talk about our resume, okay? And my advice, let's see, I think what I want you to do is, this is going to be recorded. I highly suggest that we're going to be talking a lot of things verbally. So just feel free to just have like notes or a pen and paper, or being able to type your notes. That'll probably be the best. So that way, if something's really important to you, just go ahead and just like type it on the notes, or have something personal for you, just because it's going to feel like we're going fast, even though we have all sorts of material, all sorts of slides ready to go. Just if you know that you have, um, you know, like a very important need to improve your resume, just be ready to take some notes, okay? Even though it's going to be all here. All right. So I like to form all, just because this is a little bit relevant. We're going to be talking about the modern attention span. And this is relevant for communicating in emails. This is relevant for data analysis and presenting data visualizations, for interviewing especially, and also for resumes. This concept is very, very universal. And I think it's a very easy way to remember how much time you're working with, okay? So I have a question for you all. And this is totally a chance for you to be on the dance floor with me, okay? First question for you all here, or first official question. How long do you think the modern attention span is? Okay, let's think about, when I say modern, I'm talking about sort of the age that we live in today, the information age. There's this concept that there's an attention span, right? Like, how much attention are people going to pay when they're listening to someone else? Does anybody have any guesses about how long that modern attention span is? And this is one of my favorite things to ask because it tends to pop up in most of my workshops. I see a lot of different guesses, so it's really fun to see to see what you all come up with. So let's see. So Saksham is saying 5 seconds. Okay, that's pretty short. All right, and I know I'm having the same reaction. Macy is sort of saying 2 minutes. Okay, a little bit more optimistic. 2 minutes is good. Devraj, yeah, 5 minutes, really giving people the benefit of the doubt. I like this. I want to say, yeah, Ramya is saying 60 seconds. That's pretty good too. And by the way, I really hope that I just don't be offended. I know I'm going to mispronounce some names here, so I'm sorry in advance. I'm just a boring American person, so I don't really have too much. I know some names, from my colleagues that I've worked with, but some names I'm going to definitely not get correctly. So just bear with me. I'm sorry in advance. I'm going to try. Okay, feel free to correct me too. If I totally mispronounce your name, just say, Daniel, you did it wrong. I'd be okay with that. But anyway, let's get back to the main question. How long is that modern attention span? And I'm going to have to say that sadly, when we think about Saksham's suggestion about 5 seconds, that's probably pretty close to what we're seeing here. We're dealing with 8 seconds. And again, the link is here if you want to check it out on your own time. Feel free if you have the link handy. But 8 seconds. And that kind of puts us as close as we can with a goldfish. So maybe we're not too much more advanced than we like to think for our goldfish here. But 8 seconds. And let me just quickly clarify, because I know everyone's saying, well, hey, I can do, I can study for 20 minutes or so, or I can do a project. Like, yes, there is that concept that you can do sort of a focused attention span. That's on average 20 minutes. Okay, so I totally acknowledge that. But when I say 8 seconds, yeah, when I say 8 seconds, I'm talking about if you and I are having a conversation, whether it's in person, over the phone, or even in an email, 8 seconds is about how long it takes for you to think about something else after I start talking. So, just pretend I even meet you for the first time. I say, hey, Devraj, nice to meet you. What are we going to be doing today? I'm really glad to talk about this or that. But by those 8 seconds, Devraj will be thinking about, lunch, thinking about like, oh, I wonder what I'm going to be doing for tonight. I have some really cool plans tonight. So just keep that in mind. Like 8 seconds is not much to work with, but people's attention spans are going this way and that way. And that's all because of the cell phones. There's been some research that's coming out for especially all the shows that we're all consuming. But in general, especially when we deal with adults, it's all the same, whether we're talking about kids watching TV shows, whether we're talking about students or even professionals. We all have a really short attention span to work with. And this is something that's really key to keep in mind. Okay, I really need us to be centered on this idea that we have to be urgent with all the communication and all sort of documents that we put forth. They all have to be concise. In other words, the message has to be conveyed quickly and effectively. So when we look at our resumes, and even when we think about networking on LinkedIn, we're going to be thinking about all the ways we can do to get that message out as soon as possible. And obviously, we're going to make sure it's professional and understandable and easy to read and everything. But the main message here is quick and effective communication. So I just want to quickly, just in general, this is relevant for both recruiters and also people that are perhaps opening your LinkedIn messages. And when I say recruiter, I'm talking about somebody that has a full-time job looking at resumes and looking at job applicants, right? So I'm going to put you in the shoes of, hey, I'm trying to be someone that's a candidate. I want to apply for this job. So normally you would apply to a job and there's probably dozens or maybe even hundreds of people that apply to a single job post. So it's obviously really competitive these days, and it's always has been. And it could be someone's job to just sit there and go through all the resumes. So if I just want you to imagine that, especially if that person's email is out there, by the morning time, their email is going to look like this, where it's very, very crowded. And this is 8 a.m. This is actually my email address when I was a student. And this is nothing. What I'm going to say to you is this: when you have recruiters or managers or even director level roles, they get around 100 plus emails in a single day. So right now, I want you to think about your own inbox. You probably have maybe 5 emails this month or something. But every single day, this person's going to be super busy. It's insane. So that's why I want us to keep in mind that when we have sort of our own uh, documents that we're putting forth and everything that we're doing with communication with any of these folks, it's going to be very, very quick. We have to take advantage of that 8-second window. So just think about this. Just pretend that you're writing an email to them. If you're, whether you have their email or not, they're basically going to understand this the same way. I want to propose to you that your reader has 30 seconds overall, whether it's an email, your resume, any sort of message that you have. Assume that your reader just has 30 seconds. So we're thinking about an 8-second attention span just to even read and open up the document that you have, and then maybe even some more time to think about it. And then they might respond or do something based on your email or your application or your resume. Assume all that takes place in a span of 30 seconds. Seriously, it's not that much. So I want us to keep in mind that we have a very, very small window to work with. Okay, just keep that in mind today. Okay, so let's get into some things about how our resume is read. Okay, so I want to give you some the reason why I start off this way is because we're going to take these lessons about how, we have about 30 seconds, and even in some cases less than 8 seconds. I want you to understand where exactly those eyes are going. So the eyes of the recruiter, where are they going on your page when you show them your resume? I want to show you, based on some studies, how that goes. So first of all, in sort of the recruiting industry, it's a little bit less than 8 seconds. Apparently, there's this rule of the 6-second rule, I guess, where the recruiter has 6 seconds to read your resume. And don't think that that's it. 6 seconds is all it takes for the person that's reading your resume to determine one of two things. In 6 seconds, they either say, yes, I want to keep reading. So not necessarily, yes, I want to move this candidate forward, or yes, I want to have a phone conversation with this person. It's, yes, I want to continue reading. Or it's, no, I don't want to continue reading. And then, unfortunately, just moving their message to the trash. So that's what we mean by 6 seconds. If they pass that 6 seconds, so let's say your resume looks good and it looks exciting to them, they're reading for more than 6 seconds. Yes, I will read for more than 6 seconds. What will end up happening is they'll read more and they'll start reading the details. They'll start reading every specific experience, and they'll start forming a picture about you in their head. So just keep in mind that 6-second rule really, really applies. And let's look at how that time is spent, okay? We're going to be using this eye tracking study. So this is essentially a heat map. So the red parts are where the eyes, and this is multiple participants. They got together, I want to say a couple dozen participants, and they had them put on these eye tracking kind of goggles. And they studied where the person had their eyes most of the time. And again, as you can see, it's like a heat map. The red is probably the most frequent. People on average saw that the most. And then the blue, or even just the non-existent stuff, those were not red at all. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you're reading this. This is called the the F pattern. F as in Frank, just the letter F. The F pattern is sort of what's used for all electronic text. It's been used for looking at web results, like on Google. It's been looked at for just any pages on a website, and it's certainly been used for resumes. It's all the same thing, where people only focus a little bit of the page. And how this applies to your resume is this. So this is my actual resume. Like it's no big deal. If you like how this looks, this is very typical for a U.S. resume. I've gotten compliments on how organized it looks. I've also gotten feedback that it's pretty easy to understand. So again, feel free. This is all based on the U.S. and all based on Silicon Valley, and for specific business roles that I'm applying to. So just keep all that in mind. That you're probably working with a slightly different culture, and you're also working with a little bit of a different role. If you're thinking about perhaps business roles, you might look more towards my resume. But if you're looking at more of a design role or sort of a coding role, yours might look a little different. And we'll see some good examples of that. But I want you to, for sure, to see how this F pattern applies to no matter what resume you're using. So when we think about this, the eyes are going to go pretty much in this pattern. They're going to go first here. They're going to spend a second or two looking at this top section, okay? And then they might read the first experience. So it's call it unfortunate or fortunate. They're going to spend a lot of time on your most recent job experience. So that's probably that first top section there. And then they're going to spend the remainder of that 6 seconds, so probably the next 2 or 3 seconds, just looking at this section. Okay. So again, we're thinking about this F pattern, and I want you to keep in mind how that's being spent in those first 6 seconds, so that way we can help the recruiter say, yes, I want to keep reading after this. And then I'll just continue drawing here. So, like we said, this is the first part, and then they're going to read this part here. Most of it, right? They're not even going to read all of it. They're going to read most of it. So you might even be able to think that some of these words don't matter, but they do. Okay. And then same thing here. Um, that's the first 6 seconds. And then after those 6 seconds, then they're going to fully read, and they might actually sit there and start reading everything. That would be really helpful if they did. And hopefully your resume is designed in a way where they actually do that. So that's sort of one way to read a resume. Other than that, they might actually spend some more time here. Then they might go down here, and then they might look up here again. All sorts of stuff happens after that. There's no pattern after those sort of first 6 seconds. But that's sort of how your resume is read. And who's not? I'm so glad. Thanks for the feedback. I'm glad that it's informative and fun. That's my goal, because I love when we can have fun while learning. So thanks for the feedback. Thank you so much. Great. Let's go ahead and kind of take these lessons and this understanding and go a little further with it. Okay. So let's look back at our resume. Let's go over some basics and some formatting. Okay. And this is pretty universal. In other words, no matter how your resume is formatted, whether it's formatted in sort of this table method here, or if it's formatted any other way, I'm going to go over some very key basics for you. Okay. Typically, you would have a single page, and you would pick a 12-point font. And again, think about this as business roles. You can certainly bring in some color. And by the way, we do have some volunteers that have volunteered to show their resume. So really thankful to have them. And we'll see some of this. And I think some of these are going to be okay, especially if you're looking at some design type of work. But typically if you end up thinking about a business role in the United States, you would normally think about sort of a single page with black and white text. And you would be consistent with sort of one font. Okay, so that's kind of my first sort of like basics I want to point out, and that just keeps us all centered. Like you definitely shouldn't go past 3 pages as a student, so just keep that in mind. It's okay, I think, in my mind, to go to 2 pages, but single page is probably the best that you can hope for, just because we only have 6 seconds to work with, right? And then typically, I would like to have things justified in a certain way. In other words, just be consistent. I have my own rule about having, when I say titles and experiences, that's all left justified. So in other words, these things are sort of kind of aligned to the left here. And then the right justified are things like dates. So these things here are sort of to the right. They're justified to the right. So just keep that in mind. I have my own rules for these things, and this is my suggestion, is to always just have the title, just because it's red. The title is something that's going to be scanned during those 6 seconds. So just make sure that your title and your where you worked is there on the left side, and then your dates are on the right side, just so that way you can take the most advantage of the room that you have. A lot of times what people do is they'll put, they'll have like their title here, just like I did, left justified. And then they'll also have a date here as well. They'll have a date right underneath, and it ends up leaving a pretty big gap here on the right. So I'd say that that's a waste of space to do it that way. I always suggest having the date on the right side, so that way it makes use of this sort of right hand or the right margin space. And just make sure, this is something to just go back and keep in mind. You want to make sure that the spacing is consistent between everything. So I have this concept of both sections and subsections. So my big sections might be sort of like these big bullet points here, or these kind of distinct sections here. At the time, it was education, experience, and additional experience. Those are my sections. And between those sections, I have sort of a gap, right? I have this gap. And this is between different sections here. So these 2 gaps are the same. For your subsections, this is sort of, your actual titles and your actual experiences here. These are my subsections. And what I want to call out is I have my own spacing. Let me see if I can draw it. I have my own spacings in between here. So I just want you to keep in mind that you should always have spacing in mind, and it's okay to have a different spacing for your sections, a different spacing for your subsections. Just make sure that they're all consistent. Make sure that your resume is kind of formatted in a way where there's sections and subsections, first of all, but then also make sure that the spacing is pretty consistent between all of those things. And then just have, I'm going to just give you what I call like logical. So just make sure that they make sense and that there's rules. This part's up to you. When I say typographic rules, it's up to you. And when I say typographic, I mean things like the use of capitalization, the use of bold, or italics. So for me, I like to use maybe all caps for my section names. So that's maybe one rule that I have. And maybe I have bold for titles and experiences. Here, actually, let's make sure this makes sense. There we go. And for like bold titles, maybe I have all my bold titles here. And then for italicize, maybe locations and dates, like I have just the rule here. And this is all just to keep things sort of consistent for me. It really helps to have a little bit more interest when people are looking at your resume. So don't feel like you can't use any of these features. You should certainly use bold. And then we can talk more about color. And by the way, guys, if you have any questions at any point in time, I'll pause at random points. I'll kind of give us a chance to catch up. But if you have any questions at all about any of this stuff, maybe I'll just pause now while I wait. Did I bring water? I guess I didn't bring water. Here it is. Okay, I'll take a sip of water. But is there any questions I can answer now? And again, feel free to ask questions at any point in time. Devraj, I totally agree. Typography is like a really underrated part of building your resume. I totally agree. It's something that's overlooked in all the advice that I've seen. Usually they talk about just making it look nice. So that's kind of unfortunate for me. That's not enough detail for me. When I look at advice from online, they'll say, "Oh, just make sure your resume looks nice." Like, what does that mean? I'm trying to give you a little bit more detail, at least from my perspective. So yeah, anybody have any questions before we move on? And again, type it at any time. I'm just gonna drink some water real quick. All right, great. So far, so good, it looks like. And again, if you type your question at any point, even if it feels like we moved on, I will totally come back and answer them. So don't feel like you are missing out at all. Oh, great. Yeah, let's pause. I think we have some coming in. This is a good place to answer some questions. So Macy is asking, would you say quality of experience over design or the other way around? I think it's sort of it needs both. It's not, in my mind, it's not a balance of one or the other. I'd say that if you have both, that's great. You want to maximize the quality of any experience that you have. So we'll talk about that, and I want to talk about some examples, and when we get to that, you'll see some questions that you might have. But my suggestion to you, Macy, is always when you have an experience, you're going to maximize that on your own. So you're always going to have sort of a way to describe that's the best. And at the same time, you can also do design. So those things don't counteract each other in my mind. So I don't know. And then to answer your broad question, though, I'd say is one more important than the other? I'd say quality is more important. The reason why I say quality is more important is because sometimes you'll have roles that if the hiring manager is good or if the recruiter is good, they'll know that you're a good candidate without sort of a perfect formatting. Like they'll look past your formatting mistakes, or if there are mistakes, or if it looks inconsistent or whatever. A really good hiring process would kind of prioritize sort of your quality of experience, but that's not always the case. That's why I kind of recommend doing both, because it's possible to do both. Great question. That's a really helpful question. Okay, and Anandi is asking, are templates of resume that are present on Google or on Canva, do they play an important role? Yeah, I think so. I think when you look at, let's try that. You know what? I want to make this really interactive. Let's try that. I know exactly what you're talking about, because there's all sorts of things that you can apply from the web. And I just want to give you some examples. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just type in. Yeah, let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and go to a Google search. It's pretty interesting. I'm always curious. Like if I open a new Google tab, I wonder how different it looks for you all that are around the world. But anyway, let's look at like resume templates. And yeah, you'll see some. Let's look at Canva. I mean, you'll get some good ones here. So let's just open this up real quick. All right. So you'll notice here that a lot of these are really sort of cutting. I don't want to say cutting edge, but the design looks really, really good. Like these are really nice looking templates, and these are more for design. So I want to say that when you have your resumes and if they look like this, especially in a design role, this is completely appropriate for any sort of design or even sort of user experience type of role. This is completely appropriate. I would totally recommend this. However, if you're not applying to sort of a design type of role, I would recommend something a little bit more traditional, sort of like mine, sort of here on the right. Um, so yeah, actually, this is a great suggestion to look at this because yeah, I think for the most part, a lot of this looks good. Let's see if we can pull up one. Um, Maybe not. Okay. Oh, maybe let's see if we can pull up. Let's look at this one, just to look at something. Okay. Let's see. Is it going to be? Is it going to help us here? Okay. Never mind. I'm not going to worry about it too much. But anyway, yeah. If you do find some resumes on here that you think is good, just still keep some of these concepts in mind about making sure that the bolding is proper, making sure that everything is consistent. That's something I highly recommend. So some of the rules that we just talked about are always going to apply. And especially how it's read. Just make it really make the user experience for the reader of your resume really really easy. So if you do choose to go a route that's not sort of this traditional route, just make sure that it's very very clear and consistent across your resume to get all that stuff in. Okay, that's the one thing that I would suggest. Other than that, let me look at just some resume templates that's not from Canva, and you'll start to see some I'll just look at images just because image I've done this before, and you'll see all sorts of different things. Something like this is combined in my mind. This combines. Let's see if I can kind of zoom in here. I think this is yeah. There we go. Oh, I miss the old days where we didn't have to sign up for every single website that we ever use. Let's see if I can kind of just zoom in a little closely. Let's see if this works. Okay, this kind of works. Sorry if it's small, guys. I'm trying. This is a good combination of sort of the things that we talked about. So again, you can kind of see that for the most part, it kind of follows the rule of having things scannable in this way, while also kind of giving the person a chance to see like, hey, here's my skills and bringing in some color. In the U.S., at least, I'm going to just say for the U.S., it's not common to have your photo attached to the resume. So just keep that in mind. I'm not like the one thing I'd be wary of, Nandandi, about resume templates is, oh, there's a picture that's provided. I better provide a picture. That's not always the case. At the end of the day, do what you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with something like this, and you're comfortable being able to edit this and show this off, especially for a design role, then follow a template like this. If you're following a business role or something where this is kind of like where your skill set is at, sort of like what we're seeing on my resume, that's also good too. So just know like what you're applying for, and many different things apply. There's no rule about what's the best template. There's only things that are going to help you with design, which is what I hope to show you today. Does that answer your question, Nandi? Hopefully that's helpful. Thanks for the question, by the way. That's a really great question. All right, and Macy has another question. Yeah, career objective on top. Yeah, so Macy's suggesting, hey, some friends might say, hey, what about career objective? You should add career objective on top. And I want to say that your sections are all it's all up to you. So I'll give you my perspective on using it. But what I want to quickly say and emphasize is what you call education and experience. It's all up to you. So some people I've seen. So education is pretty universal, but for like experience, they'll call it professional experience or something like that, or they'll even call it like work history. This is all up to you. For me, I want to keep as few words as possible, but how you frame this is all up to you. Like the words that you use and also how you order it. Okay. So in other words, I think about it as like it's good to have 3 or 4 sections, and you have like education is a pretty common one. Experience is obviously pretty required. Additional for all your projects. These are all sections that you need. And career objective would be one of the sections, or it would be one text on the top. And if you ask me, I'd say it's totally appropriate because let's just go back to sort of how our resume is read. Let me just kind of go back to the slide here. The objective, just keep in mind, the objective would sort of fit like right here, right? That is literally the prime real estate. That is the most valuable part of your entire document. If you are so comfortable with your objective that you're selling, as long as you're selling yourself, don't just say seeking a role in, design, or seeking a role in coding, or seeking a software engineering role. Do not just say that. If you're going to use that space, if you're going to use one of your sections as a sort of an objective, or a summary, I've seen either summary or objective used in this section. Just make sure that you're having a pretty well thought out sort of, something that describes yourself and sells yourself and makes yourself appealing to the person reading your resume. In other words, don't just say seeking a software engineering role. Say something like, dedicated, dedicated person, or sorry, dedicated coder in Ruby on Rails or in Java or whatever. I'm making up some words here because I don't really do coding. But actually, let me just kind of focus on myself. Here's what I would say. Instead of making something up, maybe I should just tell you what I'd write. That makes sense. I'd say something like goal-oriented professional who specializes in data visualization and communication, seeking roles in, and then this is where the job description would come in. Seeking roles in, seeking role as, and you can be broad. You can say as a group leader. That's something that you could say, or you could say the actual role as a. Let's see, what would I say? I do a lot of work in SQL, so I do sort of data analyst type roles. So I'll just say like data analyst. That's what I mean. So don't just say seeking a role as a data analyst. You're going to say something like goal-oriented professional who specializes in data visualization and communication, seeking roles as a data analyst. Or it's going to make a little bit more sense than that. But just make sure that you are highlighting some really cool aspects about yourself. And this could be, not just two lines here or one sentence. It could be 2 sentences or 3 lines or 4 lines. I wouldn't go more than 2 sentences there, though. That's a great suggestion, Macy. You can use the career objective there. I just choose not to, but you can if you feel like it. All right, and thanks, Raj, for keeping me up to snuff on my knowledge. I'm glad that you guys don't use photos on your resume. It just feels a bit strange, if you ask me. So I'm glad that that's not practiced there. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That if you have a portfolio and even just your LinkedIn profile, it would just be there, ready to go. Yeah, thanks for dropping that knowledge on me. Okay, great. These are great questions. Really thankful for everyone's participation. I hope you like the dance floor. I hope you like it. It's heating up, which is great, and it's also getting brighter. You'll notice over the next couple, I don't know, next hour or two that we see here, you're going to see the sunrise. So that's kind of cool. That's how you know I'm a true Californian. Okay, I'm proving it with my background. All right. Oh, and Nadia asked another good question. Should we also attach the cover letter with the resume? That is a great question. I've seen all sorts of advice on this. I've seen people that say, no, I don't care to look at the cover letter, so don't even put it on there. I've seen people say the cover letter is what sets you apart. So there's been all sorts of dialogue. So I'd say include a cover letter. Even just don't think that it'll be read. Okay, like don't submit a cover letter, and then if you get an interview, don't say something like, "Oh yeah, you probably saw this on my cover letter." Like don't. I just want to say, don't assume that it's going to be read. But I do think it's helpful to have a cover letter. And one tactic that I'll share with you is some people, because in my mind, a cover letter really sets you apart. It truly does. And actually, let me pull up a cover letter. We're not going to go through many cover letters today, but if it's helpful, I'm happy to share like what I've done in the past for cover letters. Let me exit out of here, and I'll just pull it just because I think I have one ready. We talked about this at a previous workshop, and I think I have one ready. Just give me a moment here. So the cover letter absolutely sets you apart, but not everyone's going to ask for it, and not everyone's going to read it. But I have a tactic that you can use to make people to make people read it, frankly. Let me just show you what I mean by a cover letter. And again, this is all sort of US-based advice. I think this is, let's see, I think this is working. Yeah, okay. Okay, this is good. All right, let me pull this up. So at the time I was applying, I don't know, as a student, I applied to many different roles, and I had a template. Okay, so let me just explain my template. I don't want to just try not to read it. Okay, as much as you can, try not to read it and just focus on me talking if you can. Here's what I want to say. Basically, this is all a template. Okay, all I did was change uh, this, obviously the date. Like these things are obviously going to always be changed. Um, and then everything else was pretty straightforward though. Like this was all the same. Like I'll just kind of use the blue as like what was pretty much the same. This was all the same, right? Like some of this stuff is all the same, but all I really did customize was sort of like this part. Maybe I'll have an attention getter here and here. So a really good cover letter is straightforward, and if they actually sit there and read it and just look at how, just look, sometimes they'll just look at it and say, "Oh, that looks nice." Honestly, that in and of itself can get you pretty far. So what I want to say is cover letters are really helpful, and the tactic that I want to share with you is this. So a lot of times you'll have a chance to submit both one file for your resume, one file for your cover letter. So a lot of times, like I said, just talking with some recruiters from my experience, they'll say they don't read cover letters. So you'll feel like, okay, I got my resume is going to be read because the resume file is there. It's going to be read, and the cover letter file might not be read. So something that's worth trying, and certainly that's fun for me to do. Your resume can be, let's just go back to our resume here. For the resume, you can have one page be the actual resume. And even though it's the resume file, you have another page that's your cover letter. And the reason why you do that is, you have one page for your resume, one page for your cover letter. They're forced to look at your cover letter. So suddenly they're not only looking at your resume, but they're suddenly looking and saying, "Oh wow, let's see what this person has to say." So if you make it past that 6-second test from that first page of your resume, then suddenly your chances of it proceeding even further is going to be really, really good because they're actually sitting and reading your cover letter because it's in the same file in front of them. It's a big difference. You'll be surprised. Having to open up a separate file is a big it's a big challenge for a lot of people. Like people like to be able to just look at one thing in one window and close it and move on. So that's my tactic for you guys is just put your cover. If you do feel like you want to put a cover letter, try to put it in the same file. Put it in the same file as your resume, and also attach it in the cover letter section in case they ask for it. That's my suggestion. Just put it all over the place. That's a great question. Does that answer your question, Nadia? I just want to make sure. Does that answer your question? If by the way I don't answer your full question while you're asking these questions, guys, just feel free to just say yes or no, or continue asking questions. I just want to make sure I answer your question, so just let me know. Okay, things are going great. Let's see. From a time perspective, okay, I think we have. Okay, I think we're doing okay on time. Let's talk about the different sections now. I'm going to speed up a little bit, but don't stop your questions. The questions are the most valuable part of this whole experience. Okay, I don't want to sit here and talk to the slides. I'd rather answer your questions, frankly. But let's talk about header and sections now. Okay, so always list your full name, email address, and phone number. These are like bare minimum requirements to have, simply because people these days want some way to contact you. Some people are email only; they will email you. Some people will still call you. I'm pretty sure one day we won't need to get phone numbers anymore. When I apply to jobs, people don't really call first anymore. People still sort of send an email first, which is really helpful. So always have that at the top. So I'll just putting up an example. There's many different ways you can do this. This is one way where the name is sort of emphasized here, and you have sort of the address if you need to. You don't always need the address either. Oh, great, Nandati. Thanks for confirming. You're welcome. Then there's your phone number, and you also have even your email address, LinkedIn URL, and you can even put sort of your actual, GitHub or whatever other personal website portfolio thing you have. So always list that. And what I want to say is don't have more than 3 to 5 sections. We talked earlier about sort of the ideal number. I have 3 sections. You can go up to 4 or even 5. Just make sure you tell a story. I always recommend, so if you're a student, your education section is going to go sort of higher up there. So don't think that, the reason for that is because you want to highlight that you're a student, and you also want to highlight the great coursework that you're doing and all the projects that you're doing in school. So that's typically why you want to put your education section either first or second. And the reason why you'd put it second is it would be after the career objective that we talked about earlier. So it would either be right after the career objective, or if you don't use a career objective, it would be right there on top. And in this link, there are so many so many possibilities. This is a great article that I've found. This has been pretty informative. It gives you sort of an understanding of like which types of sections to use if you're like sort of a professional or a recent grad. Some people are calling it like they'd go summary statement first, like professional summary. Then they'd go into their experience. Then they might talk about their professional organizations, their education. You'll notice that in general, there's no more than 5, right? That's the thing to keep in mind. And I guess if you are, the one exception is if you're going to change careers, you do want to have, all sorts of things. That's a more complicated story you have to tell. So maybe you have to get more involved. But just in general, you want to keep these sections down kind of to a minimum. You don't want to overwhelm people with every single thing. So that's a really helpful link that you can use from the material. And then everything, when I say reverse chronological, this isn't always obvious to people, but just make sure your most recent is first. Okay, so your most recent experience is first, and the one that you had long ago is last, because it's kind of they want the most relevant on top. So different things could just be, like I said earlier, there's like an overview type section where you're calling yourself like you're calling the section objective, career objective. You might say summary of qualifications. Some people like to just say skills or like leadership, like you're summarizing those things in sort of a overview type section. And then you're going to talk about your education. All this stuff. I want to quickly say that what I want to do today is make sure that your questions are answered about how to talk about and highlight your education experience. So anything you do with extracurricular activities, clubs, any sort of projects or research that you're doing, those absolutely should be talked about on your resume, whether they're in the professional experience section or the education section. There's ways to do both, but what I want to do is make sure that you guys feel comfortable really selling your own sort of experience when it comes to what you have at school. But anyway, this education section might have GPA. This is optional. Don't feel like having a GPA is required. At least in the U.S., it feels like okay, it's nice to have if it's a good GPA, you should certainly include it. But it's optional in general. It's kind of I've heard different advice about this based on the different countries, but GPA can or cannot be put on there just based on your own judgment. And then other than that, you also have your experience. So you're going to be talking about sort of what jobs you had, any leadership experience that you had, internships, anything else. Like some of these can also apply. Some people also put like their volunteer experience on there because they're students and they're young. That makes sense. I don't see anything wrong with that. Just keep that in mind. You certainly can do that. As well as the different sections for like the skills or projects that you have and other. The one thing that you notice is that some of these things can overlap, right? If I have a job experience or any type of experience, it could apply in a different sort of section. So just make sure when you kind of organize your resume into all these different categories that they make sense and that you have each category is sort of evenly filling up the page. In other words, just try as much as possible for things to be balanced out, if that makes sense. You're going to have to determine based on your own experience what balance of these section names make sense. And Saksham has a great question here that I'll read out loud. So should the research internship be in the education section or in the experience section? And this one, if you ask me, this one's up to you. I want to say experience. Whenever I can, I always want to talk about things that are professional. Like I always want to say things are professional experience. So I would suggest that you should put that in your experience section, although you could put it in your education section as well, because perhaps you did it while you were a student and while you were doing something else. You might have subsections in your education section. In other words, you'll have a chance to sort of say, hey, here's my degree. Here are all the projects I'm working on. Here's the classes I took and the major, project from each class. There's different ways to sort of address that. But I'm leaning towards putting it on your experience section, but it's totally up to you, Saksham. It's all based on sort of how you want to balance out the different sections of your resume. Does that make sense? It's totally up to you. I just personally prefer putting it on the experience whenever I can. Okay, great question. The final thing I want to talk about, hold on, let me just see. Is this the final thing? Yeah. Okay, cool. We'll skip over that slide a little bit. So what I want you to do is think about also these action verbs. So each bullet point within a subsection, so any of this stuff here, these are all going to be using action verbs. And this is universal. Again, this is not like a recommendation. In my mind, this is a universal rule to always have the action that happened. And this has, I've seen this advice, at least in the US, I've seen this advice for both business and technical or coding / design type resumes. This idea that everything that you put on your experience should lead with an action verb. So let's think back to sort of why that is. Oh, let me just go back here. Let's think about why that is, right? We talked earlier about how based on our scanning, they're only going to scan sort of this section, right? And this left margin, this entire left margin, let's put it in this bright green color. Wait, there we go. This entire section here, they're going to scan essentially all of the action verbs. So when we think about these action verbs, all they're seeing is calculated, identified, managed, established, authored, introduced. I mean, again, it's you have to kind of take yourself and be a little bit proud of what you've done, and to do that, you have to really highlight what you did. What action did you take for a certain project, a certain responsibility? Like what one accomplishment did you do, and how could you sort of talk about that? Usually is with this action verb. And I have this link to this really helpful resource here. So I'll go ahead and put, this is to Indeed, really popular job searching site here. And they increased it to 195. At the time it was 130, but now it's 195 action verbs. And let's see, yeah, it's all down here. And it's kind of, I like to use this for inspiration. But if you're talking about accomplishments, you can talk about like, oh yeah, this is a great thing that that wasn't done before, or it's pretty special. Things like achieved, amplified, attained, pioneered, whatever. You might have some responsibilities that you want to highlight. So maybe you executed on something. You really held your own on your responsibility of the team. You initiated something. You produced or operated on something. And then you can talk about your communication skills, how to express that you're creative. Maybe you're talking about like, oh, I designed something, or I conceptualized something. These are all great, honestly, like fantastic verbs to use. And every single one of your bullet points should start off with something like this. At least in my opinion, everything should be sort of explaining your value and your contribution to whatever you did. Because there's a difference between, if I go back to my resume, for any of these roles, I could have just sat there and literally did nothing. I could have done the bare minimum, or I could have gone and like revolutionized the role, like change the whole organization from my role. And I think the thing that you need to understand about whenever you list your own experience, you have to get the reader to understand that you are the person that excelled in that role. You excelled in that previous role, and that's why you're going to excel at the current role that you're applying for. Okay, so have these action verbs here. Yeah, that's what I'd suggest here. Okay, and I'll talk quickly about how to frame some of these words. So I'll talk about, I don't know, let's just pretend that we're in sort of a marketing type role. So instead of saying something like, oh, I created a sales plan for hardware products, let's talk about how to just really sell that. We didn't just create something. We want to say like, wow, we had a huge impact. So increased team sales by 29%. And that's the other thing you want to do whenever you can. And this might not be relevant as a student or as you're kind of building experience now, but try to get numbers in here. Try to quantify the impact that you had. So in this case, you're increasing. So instead of just saying sales here, even if you're not doing the direct selling, if I'm creating a sales plan, even though I'm not the one selling, I could still say, look, sales increased by that much based on my plan. So increase team sales by 29% by developing a sales strategy for the hardware segment. So you can see right away how it just sounds a little bit different and a little bit more powerful when you have these action verbs in there. So does that make sense, guys? I'll pause real quick for questions. In other words, I'm going to pause for water. But I see one here from Devraj. I think, yeah, you should absolutely put your portfolio link on your website. I think it's pretty, even though it's something that might not be read, it's something that is kind of expected. Like something you're never going to know if people actually look at that thing, unfortunately. But I want to say that because you have it on there, your goal should really be for it to be really easy to use. Your portfolio should be really easy to understand, and it should be fun. Like for them, that's probably something that they're going to do after 6 seconds. They're probably going to say, "Oh, okay, yeah, I want to keep reading Daniel's resume, and oh, look, he has a portfolio." And it should be fun. It should be really easy for them to look at, and they should feel inspired from your portfolio. So I want to say, yes, keep your portfolio up to date and put it on your resume. Absolutely, if you have a portfolio. Okay, these are great questions. Oh, let me actually drink my water before we continue. All right. Okay, so I have some basic resume do and don't, or do's and don'ts, kind of a United States term, like do this but don't do that. So absolutely include keywords from the job posting. So whenever you see any job posting, get some of the key. And actually, let's look at some examples. Let's just look at it. Let's look at. Mm, I guess I can look on. Let me just look at like. Hold on. I'll give you some example. Let me just pull up one. Let's pull up a random one from LinkedIn. Okay. So I'll pull up this. This is just a random posting that appeared on my. There's a job section on LinkedIn, and I'm just kind of going through that. And the nice thing about LinkedIn is that when you sort of look at different types, or they'll even look at your current experience, and they'll have an understanding of like a nice algorithm that adapts to sort of what you're looking for. So in other words, if you use the sort of job search function on LinkedIn, you'll get only the jobs that are relevant to you after a while. Anyway, when I say look at the job description, we're going to be talking about looks like here we're going to be generating reports for this role, planning and executing A and B tests. They're looking for professional experience with Python and R. I'm just kind of reading it out loud, and then I'm going to translate how this applies in just a moment. Looks like they like communication skills, and let's see. Yeah, strong communication skills, ability to ideate, plan, and execute. So this is like project management. So how I'm thinking about this is when I go on my resume, I want to make sure that I include things like um, communicated plan through different stakeholders, or communicated plan with different stakeholders. And that way you can kind of highlight the communication value here. And if they're talking about SQL and Python or R, maybe on my resume, I'm going to make sure that those appear first. Because I know that in certain resumes, you can list your skills up top, or you can have a certain order. Like let's say you have 10 skills, it might go from most important to least important. So it looks like Python is really relevant there. So I'll bump up my Python experience up there. Versus if they really like Tableau or a different software, then that'll go first. Does that make sense? Just always kind of look at the keywords and kind of prioritize that on your resume. You should absolutely change your resume based on the job description. Make sure you proofread multiple times. I mean, this feels like very easy to say, but it's something that always helps. Sadly, I'll look at some resumes and I'll see different types of um, stages people are at. And there's always people say, "Oh yeah, I looked at this like 10 times." You kind of get into a blind spot because you're looking at your resume for the longest time. You kind of forget to see some stuff, or you skip past some stuff. So try to proofread as much as possible, at least the spelling checks, and have other people review. Just go to your fellow student or something and say, "Hey, can you just look at my resume? Like, what do you see? Like, what suggestions do you have?" Someone will like one thing I've noticed. Someone will always have suggestions for your resume, even if you think it's perfect, even if it's worked for you before. People will always comment on your resume just because they just feel like they have their own style. So again, just keep in mind that there's no right or wrong answer for your resume, but it's always important to have people proofread it. All right. And I said this earlier, but make sure you have different versions tailored to different jobs. So again, the job might sound the same, like it might be a coding job or a design or user experience job, but even though they're perhaps even the same exact role, like they have the same title, you're still going to want to change your resume based on the job description primarily, and also things like the industry. So perhaps if I'm applying to sort of a tech industry, then I want to sort of highlight my tech skills or my tech savvy skills, and that'll be different if I'm applying to sort of like a healthcare industry. So just keep in mind that you want to highlight different things based on the job description, based on the title, based on the company, frankly, and all sorts of other things. And finally, just be consistent with how you describe like your past tense. So if it's a prior experience, it's in past tense. If it's a current experience, it's in present tense. Okay, I've seen all sorts of people mix up sort of their past and present tense, and that gets it just becomes a little bit one of those things where it can turn people off, even if they continue reading a resume. So in other words, let's just go back to my resume. Um, if I have a current experience, I can talk about this in sort of present tense. You'll notice that I have this in past tense, like even though this is a current experience, this is a past tense because these are accomplishments that I did. These are one-time accomplishments that I did in the past. But if you're talking about sort of what you're doing now or what you're responsible for, just keep that in present tense for your current roles. And for your prior roles, there's always going to be past tense because they're in the past. You're done with those jobs. They should always have past tense, managed, established. Okay, so just make sure that part's consistent because I've certainly seen that too. So don't. So just make sure you use the past tense consistently and the present tense for current job if it applies. You can certainly use past tense for your current jobs as well. Okay, so things that you shouldn't do. Don't misrepresent your experience. Do not lie. Okay, do not lie. This is just pretend that you're, like in a court of law, that you're doing an oath. Do not lie on your resume. The main reason is it'll dig you into a hole where you just will be found out. You'll eventually, the person that's interviewing you typically knows when someone is lying, and even if you do pass and they believe you, it'll put you in a spot where you're on the job and suddenly you're performing below expectation because you lied on something. Just don't do that. Okay. Even though you feel like you can get away with a little bit of something or highlighting something a little bit more, just be honest as much as possible. I promise you that's the best way to go. And try to avoid using irrelevant experiences. As a student, that's a little bit more okay. I think any experience that you get as a student is probably okay, even if it's like a volunteer experience, or even if you're working at what seems like an irrelevant job, like an entry-level job. That tends to be okay as a student. But just in general, if you feel like you don't have space, those are some of the experiences that can be, kind of cut back. Because just imagine yourself as a seasoned professional that has 10 years of experience. You probably don't need to talk about, that time you worked at this restaurant one time. You're probably going to want to focus on your more relevant experiences when you have too much to talk about. And when I say don't experiment, what I mean is don't be inconsistent. So don't go crazy with don't be the first one that does like a bright pink resume, or don't be the first one that does like this very new concept where things are like flipped around or something. Just follow like I hate this advice because it feels like you're putting yourself in a box. But if there's a template out there, that's good. Like follow a template, that's good, and then improve upon it slightly. But don't like come up with your own brand new thing just because you want to be unique. You need to have a very consistent story. So just at least while you're a student, try to sort of understand what's out there. We talked about Canva earlier. Those are great experiences to use or templates to use. But just don't go off the wire. Okay? Use those for inspiration. Don't think that you can do this on your own. I've seen that as well. And finally, at least in the US, you don't need to include your high school information. That starts to become really irrelevant, especially if you're in college. I'm even going to recommend this to international kind of folks. You don't need to include your high school information. Maybe if you had experiences there, but you certainly don't need to throw in that you graduated from a certain school. And when I say high school, I don't know how this translates. This is basically whatever school institution that you had before you graduated, before you went into college. Okay, let's see. Let me just go through some very basic things. The other kind of things to keep in mind is I'm going to call your attention to just two things on the slide. I know I'm moving a little bit quickly on this one. I want to save time for everything else. I think we have a little less than an hour left. So I just want to make sure I highlight everything in a quick way. Yeah, I'm on. Feel free to remove it right now. That's my recommendation. Just because you have other, the reason why you're going to remove it is because like, oh no, I lost my high school experience. That was so cool. I don't know, I was the first table on my chess team or something. Some of that's okay, right? But what it forces you to do is explain about every other experience that you have. It forces you to highlight and sell your other kind of current experiences more. Uh, like that way you have more relevant things going on in your resume. So yeah, I'm on. Highly recommend. So thumbs up to you. Good call. Uh, anyway, let me just call out two things on this slide, okay? So first of all is the subject. So this is only if you're emailing your resume. This first bit of advice. If you're emailing your resume, just pay attention to the subject of your email. So you could certainly use something like, oh, position inquiry for this job, first and last name. The reason why is because, again, if this person provided their email, then they're going to have literally hundreds of people emailing you, right? Or emailing them. So you want to make sure your subject line stands out. So just make sure that you have sort of the job title there. And also, if you're emailing, you do want to have sort of like a basic template. This feels like the cover letter that we had earlier. So you can borrow some concepts from there. This slide is available to you, so feel free to use this. You can copy what I have here. That's only a little bit weird if you copy mine word for word, but you can certainly use this for inspiration to sort of see how a simple type of template would look. Feel free to certainly use inspiration and borrow some words or certainly some of the flow from what I have here. The second thing I want to keep in mind for you is the file name of your resume. Do not have file names that look like this. Just resume, or especially draft resume. Do not have that. Always make sure it has some sort of meaning. And a date is kind of nice. A date knows kind of when it's last updated. I took this screenshot a couple years ago, but this would sort of say, okay, 2021. Okay, I get it. Just make sure it's a really recent file name and it has basically your name, something that's more specific than this. Because if you can believe it, there's going to be other people that have this same resume file name, and it is not good. Okay, do not go down this path. Okay, this is not a good impression that you want to leave. Before you imagine being told, no, or imagine being in the no pile without even your resume even being opened, and it's because your resume file name was just total garbage. So try to avoid that. Okay. All right. So my number one advice: job hunting, job searching, everything is going to be difficult. This is not an easy process. It's going to be difficult. It's going to try your patience, but keep trying until you succeed. You will get that job. You will get that internship. It's just a matter of time. Experiment often. Maybe you can play around with certain words. If they don't work the first time, maybe change around some words and start applying it to the next time or the next roles that you apply to. Just don't give up, and you can do this. Okay, everyone can do it. It's certainly going to happen. And we're going to talk in a little bit about how to leverage LinkedIn for some of our job opportunities in just a moment. For now, though, I want to go over some resumes and some of these individuals. I want to go over, let's see if we can go over all three. What I'm going to do is some of our volunteers, they might even be here in the chat. Let me just call out some names. And I'm going to call out these names. One, if one of these people are you, just type in the chat that you're here. I just want to make sure that you're here. And that it's okay to use your resume like as it is. Like I think you provided it to Macy at some point. So if you're here and you provided it, just let me know that it's still okay. Okay. Otherwise, if you're not here, we just want to take time to acknowledge people that are volunteering because we want to make sure that we thank them. This is going to be really helpful for us. So let me go over to my other folder here on my other screen. And I need to go back to a different message. Give me 1 second here, guys. Okay. So we have, I want to say, yeah. So we have, I'm sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm a boring American. I'm going to be very bad at pronouncing names. Maybe I'll type it after too. But here are the three people that have volunteered. And again, if you hear your name now, just confirm that it's okay to look at your resume. just all together, because again, I think we'll all benefit. This is for the benefit of everyone, and you'll get the benefit of my suggestions to your resume. Like it'll be a win-win for everybody here. So here are the people that have it, and again, just let me know if you're here. Madame Grishma or Grishma. Sorry, I'm so sorry, Madame Grishma. If you're here, just let me know, and we can just make sure that it's okay to read your resume with everyone. And then we also have, I think I see your name here, Aman Tiagi. Again, so sorry about my pronunciation. I'm so sorry. I really am. I want to meet more of you guys in person so I can like interact and learn these names. But anyway, Aman Tiagi, if it's okay to use a resume, just let me know in the chat. And then the last person we have also is Nimish Jain. Again, I'm so sorry, Nimish. I'm so sorry if I mispronounce your name. I just know I'm mispronouncing names. So anyway, Nimish, if it's okay to use a resume, just let me know in the chat before we continue. And no matter what, let's just thank everyone that has even submitted their resume or considered to submit the resume in advance. Great, Aman. I'm glad I almost pronounced it right. Thank you, Aman. Okay, so we're going to start with Aman just because he's here. And then hopefully we get to some other. Okay, Madan's here. Great. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, and also Nimish. Yeah, thanks for all. Nimish, if you feel like it, that's great too. I think we'll definitely do these two resumes. So let's start with Aman just because they responded first. Okay, I'm gonna keep away. Okay, so Aman, just so you know, Aman, I'm not gonna show the bottom part of your. I'm not going to show the bottom part of your resume just because it has some more personal info. So don't worry, I'll take that part away. Okay. So here we go. Let me bring this on over. So yeah, if I happen to be reviewing your resume, like feel free to just take notes or refer back to the recording, whatever you want to do. But we'll spend the next 15 minutes or so looking at your guys' resume. So my goal is to spend about 5 minutes each. If anybody has any questions at all, at any point, whether it's your resume or not your resume, just type it in chat. I want to make sure I address everyone's questions because, it's really helpful. So let's go ahead and open this up. So I'm going to put it on over here. Great. Oh, I'm so glad. Aman. Okay, cool. So let's see. So, by the way, I noticed that you play chess. That's really cool. Okay. I'm just making sure I know where to stop. Okay, cool. I'm not going to go past here. And by the way, I'm going to highlight this for everyone's benefit. I'm going to highlight the fact that Aman put in some information like, oh, here's my birth year, here's like my family name, some other other specific information. Some of that information is not relevant. Like you do not need to put that at all. Or if you want to put some of that, I think you might. Hold on, let me just see personally what else you have here. You can put your address if you want to, and your languages. Your address and your languages are probably the most important things here. And you definitely don't need to declare or certify that the above is true. So just keep that in mind. Your date of birth, things like confirming what your father's name is, confirming like your current or previous address. Like some of these are irrelevant, but the only thing that's relevant here, and again, I'm not showing it on the screen just to protect his privacy, is the only thing that's relevant from this section is making sure that your address is up top, and you can certainly use your languages. Your languages can. I'll tell you where to put that, and this is going to be helpful for everyone else. So anyway, let me switch back so that way we can see the first page. Okay, Aman, great. So here's what Aman's resume looks like, and I'll go straight into sort of I'll go over both formatting, and I'll also go over some some wording that you can use. And by the way, first of all, again, the point of all this, Aman. So Aman, I'm going to give you a round of applause personally. If I did this in person, I would have everyone give you a round of applause. Kind of hard to do that on YouTube. But basically, thank you in advance. I want to just say that we're going to highlight some things that are important, and this is going to be a learning opportunity for everyone. Okay, so thank you, Aman, and everyone in your head. Thank Aman and thank all of our volunteers, because it's going to seem like we're going to shred through the resume, but no, we're going to improve the resume. We're gonna make it better, and everyone's going to benefit from this. Okay, so these are all things that are relevant to everyone, and we're not going to just give Aman a hard time. Okay, this is only to improve. All right, only constructive. So thank you, Aman. All right. So let's go over this. So one thing right away that I notice is let's see. I think I would kind of I would remove resume. That's irrelevant. Go ahead and just take this and put it up top. If you put that there, I mean, first of all, we all know it's a resume, so you don't need to sort of highlight it. And in my mind, it kind of wastes space. I want to use that space for something else. So I want to use it to highlight more of my objective. Maybe I will have more experiences to highlight. So definitely remove resume from this section. Okay. And instead you can put in your name, and right underneath it would go something like this. It would kind of go like this would just basically fit like right here. Okay. So and also if you don't have it already, and this is where you can kind of put like your, phone number, and then maybe even like address. If you have a LinkedIn, actually, you're gonna have a LinkedIn by the end of our workshop here. LinkedIn address, something like this. Okay, uh, that way it kind of moves up, and that's the emphasis. That's the first thing people read. So just from a formatting perspective, you can go ahead and remove resume. So I'll just kind of say that and just remove resume. And let's see. I think, yeah, this is great. I think let's kind of let me take a second just to read this. Okay, great. And I think I'm gonna guess. Okay. Can we make an assumption, Aman? Like, what types of just real quick, like, what types of roles would you be interested in? Like, if you were to apply to a role, what types of role would you be interested in? I'm just gonna guess web developer, just because I see that here. But just go ahead and let me know, like, what that is. The reason why, and just feel free to confirm at any time, Aman. Thank you again. The reason why I'm just going to make that assumption now is because for your objective, you want to make sure that you have that listed out here. So kind of like what we talked about earlier. And again, obviously, if Aman heard this talk today, he would have made all these changes, right? Like he would have made all these suggestions. But earlier, we talked about sort of how to make the most of this objective. So we want to call out, oh, thank you. Yeah, UI/UX designer or developer. Yeah, whatever that role is, you're basically going to take the job description and you're going to put that in right here. Um, your objective is, and I wouldn't even call it objective. Like we all know that your objective is to get a job. So instead of like thinking about it as, oh, my objective is to continue my career. So before we even continue with this line, I want to say this space is going to be better utilized. Instead of saying what your objective is, use this space to sort of talk about your summary. Why are you the best person for this UI/UX designer role? So in other words, get rid of this idea that you have this objective, right? So instead, you're going to be typing things like, uh, you might even, just for your own sake, you might call this like a summary. So just to keep things in mind for you, you might consider calling this a summary. And of course, you're going to do proper spelling. I'm just kind of typing it out quickly here. So summary, and you would say something like, um, I don't know. I'm going to think about nice things to say about yourself, like fast, or like self-starting uh, student looking to um, excel in a UX role, experience with this, that, and you're going to have to craft this. Okay, you're going to have to craft this a little bit more, but use this space to summarize yourself as opposed to stating your objective. So you can still keep the word objective on there, but just make sure that you're summarizing yourself. Does that make sense? That's probably the best, because that way you kind of focus away from yourself. So because like right here, and I've seen this before too. This is not just Aman, okay? It could easily be many people in the audience here too. So what I'm saying is this: when you have this objective, it's almost like you're focusing on yourself. You're a little bit focused on what your goal is. So your goal might be to continue your career, but if I'm reading the resume, I mean that's nice. That's nice, Aman, that you want to continue your career, but why are you the best for this role? So it's pretty much implied that you want to work for that company by applying to them. So I highly recommend, with these competitive days, like these days, things are so competitive, to summarize and highlight in this section. Does that make sense, Aman? That would be how I'd leverage this space, is to sort of summarize yourself. Other than that, I think I would look at, yeah, I like this. I like, what I would recommend is spelling out, let's see. I would probably try to take your resume, sorry, these dates, try to put them on the right is a little bit better. So putting them on the right is a little bit better here. And what I want to know is sort of your, oh, good. I'm glad you're taking notes, man. What I want to know too here is sort of your, what your degree is. And this is mainly because maybe from me, I don't really know too much about like these letters here, these acronyms, but just I want to know what your degree is. And what's your current university? Maybe that's not. Maybe to me that's not clear. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's meant to be this way. I'm sorry if it is. But I'd highly recommend that you put it here to the right at the very, very least. And that way, I do like how you kind of emphasize that it could either be a board or a university. I do like that. That's actually really good. And then here, your experience. I think the one thing that is sort of missing here is, or actually two things that are missing here, is the date. So we talked earlier about like including the date, but like what date range did you do this? Is this a current responsibility? Is this something that you did for a month or 2 months or 2 years? That's not very clear at all. And the other thing that you want to do is not just talk about sort of like, hey, I'm a web developer here. You want to talk about sort of, thanks, Aman, for clarifying. Bachelor's and master's in computer applications. Oh, cool. Oh, that's nice. That's helpful. Yeah, and I think, Devraj is making a good point as well. Something I didn't even think about, but something I said earlier is to sort this in a way where you have the most recent on top. So it's kind of sorting it descending, where you have sort of your years, your most recent year on top. That would make the most sense. So just put this sort of on top, kind of flip it around that way. Thanks, Devraj. I said that earlier, but I totally didn't even think about that. Anyway, let's go back to what I was saying earlier about this experience. I want to know about like what did you accomplish? What accomplished X, accomplished Y, accomplished Z, or like what did you do? Like what were some of your responsibility? Did you test certain things? Did you make sure that something is more efficient? Did you make sure that the engagement was higher? Like don't even be afraid to talk about sort of the business outcome. Like it's very tempting to say, oh, I made so and so more efficient by using less code or by using this or that, but also talk about sort of like, hey, I helped improve the web traffic by this percent just based on this new design. That is really what UX is all about, if you ask me. Is not only did you make something that looks good, but you made something that looks good and is usable. So in my mind, when you think about user experience, you're always trying to kind of lead to better outcomes for the business or for the product itself. So I want to know your accomplishments here. Does that make sense? And you can certainly talk about your technical and development skills. That's good. I think when we get to our key strengths, this is something that I would take these words that you have down here and just use them up here. So for these key strengths, I want you to use them for your summary. Other than that, I appreciate these. I think this can work here. This can work. You can also feel free to do something that looks like this, just the bullet points. Like you could easily frame. Like I personally prefer this. You can find a way to just have a bullet point here, so like that way everything is sort of listed out this way. So in other words, like HTML, CSS, SAS, JavaScript, and you probably. You can find a different way to do this. I want to say that like there's probably a better way to sort of describe how skilled you are with something like this. So you might. I'm going to escape out of my notes here. We talked earlier about. Yeah, I guess we talked earlier about something like that. I guess. Well, let me just give you an example, okay? Don't feel like you need to have like these nice colors and these like little blocks or whatever. But this is something that would certainly help in my mind. If you want to talk about your design experience, then you probably want to take some of this approach. And what I've seen, like with a resume like this, they'll have sort of like it almost feels like this, right? Like down here, it's sort of like I don't know the name of this, but it's sort of like how good are you out of a total of like let's say even like 4. So like each one of these would have just imagine that they're all consistently aligned. These would all have sort of like 4 possible outcomes. And like 1, like 3 would be that you're pretty good. 1 would be that you're a beginner. Like 2 out of 4 would be like, you're pretty good at something. So when I see your resume and when I think about your goal, that's probably what I'm going to like suggest is to think about if you can incorporate some of that knowledge in there or that sort of design in there. That's what I recommend. And yeah, I think other than that, that's what I recommend for now. So I want to move on to our other resumes because I think we can learn from what other people have as well. So Aman, if you have any other questions, type in the chat. Otherwise, thank you, Aman. Everyone, if we can give like a virtual round of applause for Aman. Thank you for volunteering. Hopefully it was helpful for you. And I think that your resume is going to start looking good, especially after everything, or sorry, it's going to look even better after we take all these lessons from today. So thanks for volunteering. Okay, next we have, let's see, did I know we have, let's see, who else do we have here? Yeah, we have Madame as well. Did Nimish? Okay, we'll probably just do 2 resumes. Okay, we'll just go over Madame's resume here. Am I pronouncing that right? Can you just like, I just want to know, because I'm going to be saying your name a lot. Is it Madame? Is that a correct correct way to pronounce it? Just let me know. I just don't want to like totally wreck your pronunciation. And yeah, you're so welcome, Aman. I'm glad that you volunteered. Thanks for volunteering again. You're so welcome. Yeah. Madame, are you there? I just want to see if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Otherwise, we can just continue. It's not important that I know. I'm just curious. So okay, so let's go ahead and talk about some things that we see about this resume. And I actually really like this resume. This looks really good. Oh, great. Madame says A. I don't know if that's like, yeah. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. I understand, because in the United States or some other Western countries, we'd have sort of the family name last. I totally understand. Okay, I will call you by Grishma, and hopefully I'm pronouncing Grishma correctly too. Anyway, feel free to correct me. But anyway, let's look at sort of what we have here. So first of all, thank you for sharing, and let's look at what we have. So I like how we have the sort of URLs up here. And this is good. The reason why this is helpful is because this is actual links. Like if I'm looking at this resume, I could actually just click on some of this stuff, right? That's actually pretty nice. I appreciate that. I would consider putting the actual URL in there, because sometimes it doesn't flow through properly. But yeah, in any case, it's totally fine to include the links just like this. That's totally fine. Just only because I know you'll appreciate this, or at least I hope you appreciate this. I recommend finding a way. You might even have to reset the links, or there's some workaround to do this. But just the colors, like you know how this is like a lighter blue and this is like a darker blue. These two are darker blues. Just try to get it to where, and I know it's because somebody clicked on it or I hope I didn't. Did I click? I don't think I clicked on it. Wait, let me see. Did I click on this? Okay, I don't think it's because I clicked on it. But anyway, just try to make it so that way by default it's coming up on the same color. Just a super small detail I want to call out. Okay, great. Thanks everybody for dealing with my pronunciation. I just want to acknowledge I am who I am. If I meet more of you in person, if I work with you guys more, it'll help me with pronouncing names. So thanks, Grishma, for letting me pronounce your name that way. Okay, so what I noticed is we have a nice summary on top. So let's just read it out loud, because I think this is helpful for people. This is a really solid sort of summary. An aspiring web developer with a keen interest in front-end technologies and open source. I am passionate about responsive and accessible design. I am presently learning JavaScript by building projects as well as DSA and C++. Yeah, this is a great summary. This, in my mind, this is what people should try to go for when it comes to look. I also appreciate how it's italicized. So sort of utilizing that typographic, those concepts that we learned earlier. You can certainly take this approach. You don't need to italicize this or make this italics. That's totally fine. Yeah, this is a great summary. And again, when someone reads this resume, they're going to go right here. So let's talk about now. Yeah, again, we talked earlier about like, yeah, you probably don't need to include your secondary education. It's nice that you had a great score, and this seems like a great score. I'm pretty sure this is a great score no matter where you go. But it's a little bit irrelevant when we think about sort of applying to internships and jobs. At least from my experience, from the U.S. perspective, it's not really necessary, because it's the past, right? We want to know about what's happening now. So I'd highly suggest getting rid of your high school education or secondary education here. Other than that, what I want to focus on, the thing that strikes me right away is this. I noticed that the dates are not always, let me just highlight the dates here. The dates are not always justified in the same way. So these 2 dates are justified here. This date is justified as well. Yeah, I agree with you guys. Grishma is a great writer. I totally agree. Anyway, I noticed that these are sort of aligned here, but this is not aligned as well. That's different. I think this is a little bit the same, and this is a little bit off. So what I'm calling out is that you have 3 different alignments, and what I'm going to suggest is that you put all of them in the same alignment, because this should all feel the same. I promise you, once you put that, if the only thing you make is this one change, your resume is going to look fantastic. Like just from the look of it, it's going to look fantastic. That's the one thing that sticks out to me is the inconsistent sort of alignment here on the corner. Yeah, I totally agree. This resume is looking pretty fire. I agree, Nandadi. This is a fantastic looking resume. Other than that, I think what else would I do here? Um, yeah, the skills are summarized really good. I do appreciate the different, again, bolding styles. So we're using bold here. I want everyone just, and again, I'm not trying to sit here and just say like everyone feel bad because yours is not like Grishma's here. Like no, this is a great example of design. Grishma's using bold before some of the programming languages. It's like it really catches the attention because it's right before a big list. So when you're bolding something before a list, it's actually a really good thing. So that's a fantastic thing that you're doing there. I can certainly appreciate it. It's also consistent with the bolding that you're doing for sort of the titles or some of these other things that you're doing here. Very, very consistent. I think that's fantastic. That's a great job there. Yeah, other there as well. That's good. Um, so let's see what else I would do here. I think, yeah, I think what I would do is try to find a way to talk about this as like, so I can agree that it was a 36-hour. That makes sense. You're trying to just say that it was a 36-hour virtual hackathon, but what did you do? What did you do during that hackathon? And that's the one thing, just from this first experience. Um, and this is sort of where we can talk about like the consistency of titles. So think about it this way: there are titles and there are organizations. The title is just, it could even be as something small as participant. But let's kind of keep this. I'm going to just write over this. This is the only place I can put it. Just put like title. Wait, is there a better way I can do this? All right, sorry, this is the best way I can do it. Title, and I like how you have like sort of this separator. Organization. So in other words, when you say hack NITR, what was your role? Were you a participant? Were you an organizer? Were you this or that? But some of that you can talk about, like, oh, I was a participant in this hackathon, right? And that's what you did here. You're an open source contributor of Girl Script Summer Code. This is good. This is good. That's kind of like what you want. So try to get to this format where you have the title name and then sort of the organization name. So even this one here, like, what was your role? Were you a participant, or were you organizer, or were you this or that, or like a promoter or something, a brand ambassador? I mean, obviously, it's pretty clear to me that that you participated, but try to get these action verbs in there. I really appreciate how you did this. You built a website. You successfully demoed something. That is kind of what you want to highlight. So again, try to bring some of these action verbs to life. Contributed is good. I want you to come up with something a little bit better than worked on homepage. And maybe this isn't obvious to me, but I would like a little more detail on what a PR is, or what you're merging. It probably makes sense to people that you're applying to, but you want to say something like, you made something more efficient by merging 3 PRs. That's the better way to say that. Great. And then, yeah, I like the rank. Rank here is good. Maybe rank out of how many people might be okay. Because that way, if I see rank number 101, should I feel good about that? Should I feel proud of you, or should I feel like, oh, okay, that was pretty good performance overall, or was that the best performance? Just think about out of how many. What's the denominator here? And let's see what else. Oh, let me turn. Oh, I got to turn off. Oh, I got to turn this off for a second. And let's see. Can I scroll down here? Yeah. And let's look at some more stuff here. So projects. Yes, personal portfolio. The link here. And one thing, I'm going to get specific just because I try to adapt to where people are. And you are at a point where I can just give you some tips like this. So again, just talking about alignment earlier. So you'll notice how you have most of your alignment going on like here, but then suddenly down here, it's different. So just make sure that you have the alignment matching. That's what I highly recommend. Just align it there. And just make sure too that you have these. I noticed that you have these bullet points for every sort of line that you do. So just make sure you have those same bullet points here. Just make sure you insert those here. And here's well. Just be all the way consistent. Okay. Other than that, I want to like just end there just because I want to talk about LinkedIn. I know we spent most of our time on resume. This is great. This is a great session. You guys are asking great questions. We're dancing on the dance floor. I don't know what kind of music we're dancing to, but we're having a good time. I know. Wait, Diwali was kind of recently. Anyway, we had a good time. Okay, we're dancing right now. This is a great thing that we're doing. If you have any other questions, let me know now. And before like ask them any point right now. What I want to do for sure is thank Grishma for volunteering for resume. Thank you, Grishma. Again, if just pretend that there was a full room, clapping for you. But thank you for volunteering. Really, yeah, this was a really good. Honestly, this is really good. I think some of the things that you'll do here is going to take it to the next level. So thank you. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Thanks for the applause. I'm glad that we're all applauding Grishma here, and Lennon. Thanks. Yeah, I'm so glad that you're enjoying the tip. Yeah, I think that to me that's a really good format to use. It doesn't matter whether you're having a job description or had a job description, or if you're just a student somewhere. Just have the title and organization name. It pretty much works all the time, and that's how I do it. So anyway, all right. So if you have any other questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. Feel free to type them in the chat. Otherwise, let's go ahead and move on to LinkedIn. Yeah, I know. We only have a couple more minutes here. And I want to just quickly, you're so welcome, Grishma. I'm so glad, and I really hope it's going to be helpful for you in the future. Good luck for everyone, too, when you are doing your job search. It's going to be pretty crazy out there, at least from what I remember. Okay, I want to confirm with either Devraj or Macy. I'm stopping in about 15 to 20 minutes, right? Is that right? I just want to make sure my timing is right. I know I'm over here still waking up, so I just want to make sure that that's my allotted time. I'm happy to go a little bit past that too. I'm happy to stay like 5 minutes past. Okay, great. All right, sounds good. I'm happy to stay a little bit past if you guys like. Otherwise, let me know if I should really try to wrap up in about 17 minutes, at least on my end. Okay. So what I want to leave you guys with is an understanding of when you network on LinkedIn. And again, this is kind of based on US sort of courtesy or etiquette. It might be slightly different based on where you are, but that part's totally up to you. So I want to highlight, first of all, a couple things. I'm going to just pull up my my LinkedIn, and I want you to think about this key idea about brand. Before we hop into anything, I want you to understand what you mean by, or what I mean by brand when we talk about this. So I'll go in here, and I'll go up, and I'll look at let me just pull up my own profile. Give me 1 second here. Only because I didn't ask for volunteers for LinkedIn. I could have, but I'm just going to type in on my other screen here. Just give me 1 moment. Okay. Sorry, guys. Let me sign out. Well, what time is it where you guys are? That'd be kind of fun to know. While I pull this up, what time is it wherever you guys are? You guys might all have the same time zone, or you guys might be slightly different. I'm curious. What time zone are you in, or what time is it right now? Oh wow. Okay, cool. All right, great. I'm gonna pull over my profile again. Not that this is perfect. The purpose of me showing this to you is to give you an idea about what I do, what my goal is with my brand. Oh, cool. Okay, 9:44 p.m. Oh, cool. This is so cool that we're interacting. I'm just still so blown away that we can just have a call. Like it's over here 8:15 in the morning on a Saturday. So it's really cool that you guys. That's just really nice. Anyway, what I want to highlight here with my LinkedIn. First of all, I could do a couple more things. Like there's some things that I want to change for sure. But I want to call out a couple things. The first, number one thing that I want you to think about yourself is this. What impression do you want to leave with the person viewing your profile? What impression do you want to leave? So when I ask myself, what impression do I want to leave? My audience, well, first of all, you have to understand your audience, right? You have to understand who's reading your profile. So typically for you students, it's typically maybe your professors, but more likely you want to impress the audience that's sort of the recruiters or the hiring managers. Those are the audiences that you care about right now, at least in my mind. The final thing that you might consider is on LinkedIn, this is a little challenging, but on LinkedIn, you might consider yourself sort of someone that's trying to be a thought leader, someone that's trying to share their thoughts, someone that is okay with sharing their own opinions. So you're trying to find the balance between all of the three of these things. But at the very end of the day, just know that you can use your LinkedIn profile to apply for jobs. When you include your LinkedIn profiles, people will certainly look at it. People will look at your profile and they'll make a judgment based on that. They'll say, oh, okay, cool. I can see how complete this person's profile is or this person's portfolio is because you have an established sort of page for yourself. It adds that little bit of trust. They can see it. It's a layer of trust that you add when you use LinkedIn. So again, number one question to ask yourself, what impression do I want to leave with my audience? So let's talk about me. In this case, what impression do I, Daniel Shepard, want to leave with my audience? So when I think about this, I want recruiters to look at my LinkedIn here and kind of say, oh, okay, that's informative. And I also want people to say, wow, I want to go to this person, Daniel, if I want to learn more about something. You know, I talked earlier about my Twitch channel. I try to educate people on Twitch. So I might try to kind of cater to that audience a little bit as well, or at least tell people that I have a Twitch and they can follow me there, or that I like teaching workshops, which is how I got introduced to Macy and Devraj here, which is really exciting. Anyway, long story short, the impression I want to leave is I want people to know what I can do. I want people to know what my job description is. I want people to know like where, like what kind of content I produce. And the impression I want to leave people, like how I want people to feel. Okay, there's a big difference between what I want them to see and how I want them to feel. I want people to feel energized by looking at my profile. I want people to feel like positive energy. I want them to feel sort of like, wow, this person's very energetic. This person has a lot of charisma, is very confident. You know, some of these things are maybe not necessarily true or like the things that I want to still work on, even if I don't feel like I'm all the way there. I at least want to give that impression when I'm thinking about my own brand. That's the end of the story, guys. When it comes to brand, take this one lesson. If you ask me, take this one lesson about brand with you wherever you go. Brand is about how you want people to make them feel. When you think about branding, it's all about how do you want that consumer or that user or that audience member to feel while they're using your product or reading your resume, looking at your LinkedIn profile. Always think about branding in terms of how you want people to feel. Okay, that's all about branding. So again, my personal brand, positive energy. It talks about what I can do and what you can also do in terms of demonstrating, the work that you've done before. So let's kind of scroll through this, shall we? So again, feel free to just check this out on your own time. I have this. You can like easily get this link from right here, or you can go down to the links that's shared. I know we'll share the material with you all at some point, but I'm not going to read this in full detail. But basically, right away, hi there, I'm Daniel, a team-oriented leader with a focus on process improvement, stakeholder engagement, and storytelling through data visualization. So hint, hint, if I were to use this as a summary, this is sort of like the basis of my, I probably wouldn't say, hi there, I'm Daniel on my resume, but I would certainly say I'm a team-oriented leader with a focus on process improvement, stakeholder engagement, and storytelling through data visualization. I'm currently seeking roles in XYZ, right? So what I'm saying is there's a huge overlap between what you have on LinkedIn and what you have on your resume. So just keep that in mind. These are all concepts that borrow from each other. So at the end of the day, if you have your portfolio, your LinkedIn, and your resume, they're all telling the same story, maybe different versions or maybe different sort of pieces of the bigger picture and the bigger story. But these are all cohesive elements of your story. Okay, so don't feel like this is extra work or whatever. This is all sort of relevant, and this is what people should know about you. So I talk about other things too. So I talk about like, hey, here's what I like doing. Here's a list of my workshops. Just because, again, I'm trying to cater to different people. Otherwise, I would just talk about maybe a little bit about my projects or about what I like to do, maybe my GitHub portfolio. And just because, again, I'm trying to just talking about feeling. Just think about how you feel when I'm reading this. Think about how you feel. like while you're reading this. Okay, this is the brand that I'm trying to give. I'm going to read it out loud to you, and I want you to think about like, oh wow, okay, just think about how you're reacting. I'm overly excited about Excel, always open to deep conversations, and I'm fearlessly mediocre at karaoke. If you were to read that, you can have one of two impressions. You could say, wow, this person is very, very like positive. This person is very energetic, and that's a good thing. Like that could be a good thing. Or here's the other thing. Or you might look at that and say, oh, this person's way too positive, way too casual. I don't know if I like this person. So it's up to you. Whatever you put, it's a little bit of a risk. You could be overly professional. I don't know if I want to bring up an example of someone that's like overly overly professional, but you can certainly have a brand of being professional, and that would give you like absolutely no. Everyone will take you seriously, which is a good thing. And I think the only risk there is you'll kind of sound like everyone else. So at least this is important in U.S. culture to kind of stand out a little bit or to be a little bit interesting is kind of important in U.S. culture. So for me, this is my kind of I don't mind taking this risk and putting myself out there as sort of a positive casual brand. So I just want to keep that in mind for everyone. Keep in mind what your brand is. If you want to go for something casual, just go casual. Just go for it. Just understand that comes at the cost of seeming professional, especially on LinkedIn. People might think of LinkedIn as a professional platform. So just keep that in mind too. I highly recommend as a student, unless you're super comfortable with whatever. Again, this is all your choice. I recommend more of a professional approach for you guys. I certainly did while I was a student. I certainly kept it a little bit more professional, so that way I didn't feel like I took a risk. But I started to take more risks just because that's something I wanted to enjoy. So just keep that part in mind for you guys. Great, I got my kids walking here in the background. Anyway, yeah, I totally agree. Lennon Kennedy is here commenting that many people undermine. Like it's certainly one of the things that's not very well understood. And certainly, if you understand it more, you will always have that to your advantage. So I totally agree. Some people it works with them, and sometimes it works against them. So just be mindful about what you want people to feel when you're doing some branding about yourself. Okay, so this is like a really extended version of my summary. But again, I would probably only include something like this or borrow from my resume, something like this. And let's see. This is basically an electronic version of my resume. I didn't include, yeah, I don't know. So you'll see here, I have some of my prior experience that I don't even have in my resume. These things are irrelevant to me, but I have them on my LinkedIn as sort of a record. So these are all, even stuff when I worked at a restaurant. I've worked at a restaurant and I included as much as I could, sort of like action verbs or how to describe this in a positive way. And again, you'll notice here all the different action verbs I have. And you'll notice that they're even on my resume. So again, I borrowed just 3 points from a resume. I have more here if I ever needed to borrow from. And yeah, I have some more bullet points here as well from my internship experience. And then these are my professional experiences. I just haven't gotten a chance to populate them, but I would go in here and talk about all the experiences I have with my with this role and certainly this role too. I just haven't got a chance to do that yet. All right, and then here's how people might think about their education. I did all sorts of crazy stuff when I was here in college. So basically, I talked about all the awards and scholarships that I got in this one section. There is probably another section and a way to you can talk about your achievements. This is just the way I do it. And again, I have like a volunteer experience here. Maybe you have publications. Maybe you have projects. This is another thing. And then you can all customize this, right? I can move my projects up. I can make my publications last. I can do anything I want here. But just keep in mind like how I'm ordering this. It's all, yeah. Oh, okay. Sometimes I don't even look at my resume. I look back and say, oh, cool. Here's some of the awards I talked about. Even though I talked about it already up here, I'm kind of going in more detail down here at the bottom. So feel free to use this whenever you can or whenever you want. Like, feel free to draw inspiration from this. I certainly don't mind. So yeah, enjoy. I want to quickly talk now about tips for networking. And I think there is, I mean, I was hoping to do some exercises with this, but I think it's okay. I'll just give you the tips and you can apply this on your own. By the way, you can certainly add me on LinkedIn. Just go for it. I'm happy to just be connected with people. That's totally fine. Just feel free to add me. But yeah, let's go ahead and continue. All right. So let's go ahead and go into our tips here. So basically, there's this idea when you think about LinkedIn, there's many different purposes for it. It could just be an educational platform if you choose. Like you can go on there and just learn. But really, when you're on there, you can actually find jobs and most importantly, connection and networking opportunities. So don't. So what I guess what I'm saying is, don't just use LinkedIn for jobs or don't just use it for one purpose. Always use it for connecting with people and just networking with good intentions in mind. Okay, with good intentions. Okay, like and what I mean by that is just be authentic, be genuine, be someone that is not asking for too much. Okay, so don't be asking for jobs right away. But we're going to talk about how to approach these conversations. Real quick, does everybody have a LinkedIn? I mean, I need to take a quick sip of water here, but I want to quickly pause for questions. Any questions so far? And also, my other question is, um, do you have a LinkedIn profile? Just comment yes or no. Do you have a LinkedIn profile? That's just something I'm curious about. That's going to change how I describe what I'm about to show. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, I'm going to go a little bit slower. If you do have a LinkedIn profile, I will match accordingly. But can you guys just let me know in the chat, yes or no? Do you have a LinkedIn? Okay, looks like most people have LinkedIn. Oh, cool. Okay. You guys are up to speed for the most part. If you don't have a LinkedIn, I highly recommend, like literally today, just go in there and create a LinkedIn. Just go for it. Start adding people that you know, like whether it's at school or this group or whatever you like. Create a LinkedIn immediately. So that's really helpful to know. Thank you. All right, let me know if you have any questions while I take a sip of this water. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to give you advice on is how to build connections with people. I mean, with people that you don't know. Okay, it's really easy to connect with people that you do know because you just add them. But I'm going to give you tips on how to connect with people that you don't know. And again, you're going to keep your brand in mind. Most likely, you have to acknowledge some things that you are going to be just undeniably true about yourself. You're basically going to be a student. That's always going to be true for the most part. I'm guessing you guys are all students. You're going to be a student who's looking for either a job or an internship. That's typically what you're going to be looked at. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, you're pretty much always going to be looked at as someone that's a student who's looking for a job, which is unfortunate because you're not trying to be that pushy. Again, my advice to you all is to not be that pushy. You're not going to want to ask for a job right away. But you're certainly going to be viewed as someone that's going to say, oh, okay, this person is probably just networking. And that's okay. That's kind of good to acknowledge. So what I want you to understand is when you're networking, try as much as possible to network for the sake of just understanding and learning. Don't network for the purpose of finding a job, even if that's what you want. Even if that's what you want is a job at the end of the day, don't network and use LinkedIn for that sole purpose because it'll lead you to a path where you're a little bit too, I don't know what the word is. The advice from myself and from other people is you kind of become a little bit frustrated more easily, and also you kind of get a little bit too pushy with certain people. That's I don't know. That's something I recommend. So when you're on LinkedIn, think about your objective as always just trying to learn. You're just trying to learn and connect with people. And if job opportunities come up, that's nice to have. But those things only come up, by the way, if you're being genuine and you're not being pushy. It's a very strange dynamic, at least from my perspective. And I totally understand. What if you're a professional? Yeah, that's great too. You're able to talk about whatever you want. I'm just making an assumption that you're gonna have whatever brand that you try to have. There's gonna be a view based on what you currently are. So whatever's in your headline, I'll switch over to my LinkedIn super quick. So on my LinkedIn, this part is customizable. A lot of people here. Let me just switch over to like my net. I think my net. Let me just give you a quick snapshot about what people are using. So some people are just putting their job title on there. Their current job title is administrative intern, regional director, student intern, whatever, what have you. Other students would be doing things like this, undergraduate business administration student, or even just the program name, Berkeley Haas, senior at Berkeley Haas. This is all up to you. What you type in this section is all up to you. Oh, I didn't mean to view his profile. Oh well. So yeah, just keep that part in mind. So that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. All right, let's stick around just for 5 more minutes, and I will wrap up here. Okay. So first, let's just think about sort of a company name that you have in mind, and we're gonna start with just looking at a big name like Amazon is just a big name. However, I also recommend if that's not working out for you, try to go just like names that perhaps aren't as big, especially while you're just starting out. Just try to get familiar with people that are in the same industry or in the same space. So you might look at smaller tech companies or even startups too. So first, you're going to want to do what you're going to want to do is just search on the company name. Actually, let me just do this live. That's probably just easier. So just type in. I'm just going to type in Amazon. And if you have any connections that work there, they're listed here. So if you personally already have, a certain group of professionals that work there, oh, wow, I didn't even know. Oh, cool. I know some of these. I didn't know some of these people work at Amazon. That's cool. Nice. Anyway, some of these people will appear here if you do have connections that work there. But if not, I'm going to assume that you don't have any connections. Just in general, it's just an easier assumption. Now that you search the company, what you're going to want to do is just look at the people. And from here, you want to think about what you have in common with some people here. So most likely they'll have the same school as you, or they might have a prior job experience that's the same as you, or they come from the same city, like where they live. So you might say, oh, hey, they're from the United States, or they're from, the greater Seattle area or something. What you're trying to search now for is people that have two things in common with you. One, they're in the same sort of role or the same kind of job type that you're interested in. And two, you have something to leverage in terms of something in common with them. So let me give you an example. Let's say I want to search people that have studied at Berkeley, and I only want to focus on people that have something like, I'll just be pretty specific here, finance in their job title. So just by doing this search, I can see 212 employees that kind of meet both of these criteria. So from here, I can have conversations with any of these people. So any of these people at one point have studied. I don't mind doing this. Let me search. I guess I can search or click on a profile here. The only reason I'm hesitating is because like once you click on someone's profile, they will know that you viewed them. And there's a way you can change that, but basically just know there's a chance that they can see. Like Rena right now has seen that I viewed her profile. So if Rena is watching, sorry, I just clicked on you. Okay. But right now, I can see that this person studied at Berkeley, has a certain path. So when I'm viewing their profile, I can say, oh, cool, we graduated from the same program or from the same school. Oh, they have this kind of, experience as well at PwC. They worked at Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and now they're at Amazon. And I can also say, oh, great, wow, you're from Hong Kong. That's really cool. Maybe I have a connection to Hong Kong, or I'm interested in Hong Kong, and that would be a reason for me to sort of bring that up in conversation. Let's look at someone else, just because, just to give you some more insight. Let's look at Lorenzo. Why not? So Lorenzo here is director at Amazon. That's nice. And I can say, cool, this person went to Berkeley, or at some point did some sort of certification there. Looks like they came from, I want to say Italy. Oh yeah, this looks like Italy, or at least they studied in Italy. They went to, some other things here. And I can sort of say, oh, cool, hey, you work for Hertz. That's kind of cool. I'm interested in cars. Oh, hey, you worked for this credit union. Oh, I'm interested in finance as well. Or, oh, hey, Yahoo. I follow Yahoo Finance every day. I'm just giving you some very basic ideas. But anyway, all you're going to want to do with this information is determine from these people who is the best to reach out to. So I'm going to give you the template that I recommend to use. But first, I'm just giving you an idea of like who to reach out to. I'm going to give you what to say, but right now we're going to focus on who to reach out to. So what I recommend from here, try to only look for people that are sort of non-managers. The reason I say non-managers is because you want to get in with people that are just sort of just graduated college or like kind of near the entry level. The reason why is because they're more willing to help you. Managers and directors are a little bit too high above to, frankly, they're too busy to sort of get all sorts of help or give all sorts of help to people that ask for it. So in general, the people that, at least from my experience and the people that I talk to from their experience, they have best luck or most responses from people that are sort of at the entry level or closer to the entry level. So when you look at this, yeah, I'm definitely not going to find the vice president of finance. I might find, yeah, senior financial analyst. Perfect, like right in between entry level and manager. That might be good. Yeah, senior financial analyst. Um, Financial analyst is good. This seems to be entry level. Yeah, that's sort of what I'd recommend here. So once you have this list, let's just look at one final person. Let's look at Kimberly. And yeah, we both went to, okay, she went to Berkeley as well. Haas. I'm just looking at certain things we have in common. And this is where like the volunteer experience comes in mind. Like, oh, wow, you volunteered for the IRS. Like, what was that like? Or Close the Gap Foundation. This person is perhaps pretty passionate about empowering first generation low income students. And that's really cool. So some of these things is just important for you to keep in mind. But anyway, let's pretend that we're going to connect with this person. And here's what to say. Okay, so you found your person, you found a list of people. Let's say out of 200 people, you found like a good 20 people. Okay, ideally, you're going to be networking, I don't know, at least sending out 5 connection requests a day, just because not everyone's going to respond to you. But what you don't want to do is just hit connect. Okay, you do not want to just hit connect. You want to hit connect. I mean, obviously you're going to hit connect, but you always want to add a note. 100% of the time, add a note. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and add that note. And this is your chance with, again, taking our lessons from earlier, that 8-second attention span. This is your chance to make that impression with the person you're trying to connect with. I'm going to go ahead and give you like a template that I use. But when you say something like here, you have a very specific ask, a very simple ask like, hey, I had a couple of questions. I was wondering if I could send them your way. This is where you can have that, as opposed to just adding the person. They don't really know what you're going to do or what you're trying to do. So they'll most likely just kind of reject you or not even be connected with you. So here's something that I've used in the past. So yeah, again, I have all these steps sort of listed out for you. Let's see. Yeah, so make sure you add a note. And here's what I'd say. Okay, I've said something like this in the past, or I've either used this in the past or I've put this together and someone has used it to good benefit. I would say something like, hi, so-and-so. In this case, it's Daniel. Hi, Daniel. I'm a student at this college and notice that we have very similar backgrounds. Would you be able to answer a few targeted questions to help me understand the XYZ industry? As an aspiring professional just starting out, this would be a great help to me. Thank you, Jane Doe. You're doing a couple things here. You're saying, "Hey, I'm just a student. Okay, I'm just over here. I'm just trying to learn." Okay, so already you're introducing yourself as a student or a professional that's trying to do a job change, whatever, what have you. And you're also saying like, "Hey, I have a few specific questions. Like, I have like in mind, just very specific questions." You might even be able to say, "Can I just send them your way? I just want to ask them via message." A lot of people are getting more shy to have phone conversations, so you want to make it very easy for the person to respond. Something simple like, "I have a few questions. Can I send them your way?" Like as just a message. Some people have said in their messages here to like, "Oh, can I have a phone call? Like, can I schedule a call with you?" That feels a little bit too forward, if you ask me. I'd much rather just get them connected first and they respond to my first message. And then once I know that they are connected with me and that they like me or that we like each other, then I'll start asking about, hey, if I could have a phone conversation with you, that'd be really helpful. And again, the goal with all this stuff is once you have really strong connections with people, once you have phone conversations and once you're doing that on a really frequent basis, you'll suddenly start building your network of really authentic connections. And suddenly they're going to say things like, oh, hey, by the way, Daniel, yeah, I actually know somebody that's hiring right now. This might be a good role. You might be a good fit for this. You should apply here, or let me introduce you to this person. That's the real value of this. But again, don't network with the expectation that people will like give you jobs or opportunities or connections elsewhere. Just network to learn and try to add value to them. As a student, it's hard to add value, but what you can say are things like, "Oh, I can let you know what's going on at that school these days. If we're studying from the same school, or if we studied at the same school in the past, I can say, hey, I know you graduated, but I have some questions here that I'd like to ask you. At the same time, I can catch you up on what's happening here on campus." Something like that. That's something that you would say just to sort of add a little bit of value back to them. Networking should be a two-way street. It should never be, you will get all the benefit or they will get all the benefit. Real good networking comes when both people benefit from a conversation. Okay, any questions at all? Feel free to use this. Oh yeah. Here it is. Yeah, I guess I have this note here as well. Always act authentically with the goal of returning value. Okay. So I'm gonna leave it there. Feel free to use this. Like this is yours to use. Like you can tweak it to your liking, whatever you want to do. Feel free. If you want to add your own brand to it, that's fine. This is a little bit more of my brand, my personal brand. But use it however which way you want. But any questions I can add? I know we're past time, so thanks for staying up late with us, guys. I didn't mean to take up more time, but thank you so much. Let me know if you have any questions before I wrap up. I'll give people a last chance to type a question before I wrap up. Let's see. Let me switch on over to here. Yeah. Oh, yeah. My LinkedIn is totally up in the chat. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and you can totally search. Yeah, I'm just looking at the chat now. Yeah, totally, Lennon. You can certainly use. You can always use the search feature. It's a really powerful feature of LinkedIn. Really nice. Really glad you agree. Yeah, it's a really powerful search. It's a super helpful search if you ask me. And yeah, my LinkedIn is up there in the comments. I'll put it again in the chat just because I have it open, I think. And just in case you don't see it, I'm just looking at all the questions now. Actually, I can't put it. I just remembered on StreamYard I can't do that. But anyway, it's up there in the chat. Yeah, adding notes is super helpful, Lennon. Again, totally agree. It adds a little bit of value. It makes it feel a little bit more special, which is what it's all about. Okay, Ayush is asking a very specific question here. What do recruiters check specifically on a LinkedIn profile? And is it okay if we're not active on LinkedIn? I think it's absolutely okay if you're not on LinkedIn. So when people are on LinkedIn, it's really just think about it this way. Okay, let me just pull up like this version of my resume in the past. Let's go up to here. Really, everything after the first 6 seconds here, is going to be stuff that's fun for the recruiter. So you want to make things like your portfolio, your LinkedIn, all that stuff is just fun to click on afterward. And this is the reason why this is helpful is because like I said earlier, when you click on someone's profile, you get a notification, right? So the same thing applies when someone clicks on your profile. You will get notified if someone clicked on your resume. And I can only guess that if people are clicking on your LinkedIn or people are visiting on your profile, it's because they saw it on your resume. So this is your chance to see, oh wow, did this pass the 6-second test? Did somebody actually read my resume? Because a lot of times people sometimes don't even read your resume, or it might be too late, or it might be there might be many reasons why someone wouldn't read your resume. But that's one of the reasons that you can have a LinkedIn profile. Anyway, what a LinkedIn person is, or what a recruiter is doing on LinkedIn is this. They'll look, and it's nice to have, right? They'll say, oh, hey, it's Daniel Shepard. They'll look and say, okay, this person is legit. They do have actual connections. Don't feel like, because you don't have like a high amount of connections that it's a bad thing. Just know that like, oh, cool, this person has connections. This person is legitimate. This person is even more legitimate because I see that their experience is here tied to like Kaiser. Like it's, in this case, I can see it listed on my resume. That's really helpful to see. So it adds validation. In some cases, they are gonna look at what things that you put on there. But again, if you have sort of your job experiences listed out on your resume, that should be totally okay. The final thing that they're going to be looking for is sort of what you do on LinkedIn. So I don't know if this is scary or not, but especially if you're new to LinkedIn, you can see people's activity. I don't know. This is almost like, I don't know if it's like Facebook. I don't know who else really does this, but you can see like right now everybody could. And this is kind of the stressful part about being on LinkedIn is that you can always be followed. Like you can always like track down your comment or whatever you said. Let's just look at my activity, okay? Because from here you can say like what I've done. Like you can see like what I liked. Like I liked this post from from Devraj earlier. I liked this post from one of my connections. I like this. I like that. So you can kind of see. So some people would be able to see like, oh, this person is liking some pretty extreme content, like maybe overly political or something crazy like that. But aside from that kind of, worrisome part, what they can see is stuff that you've posted, right? So here's the real value. If I look at my posts, here's stuff that I have kind of given out for everyone. I kind of shared this workshop, obviously, but I've also have this. I guess I'll quickly plug my Twitch channel. I guess that's going to be tomorrow. Let's see, 2 days. Wait, I don't know. Basically, convert it so you can be accurate. But 4 o'clock Pacific time, I'll have this how to build genuine connections with anyone, kind of really relevant with what we talked about, right? But on my Twitch channel, we'll be talking about this. So someone looking at my profile will be able to say, oh, this person is pretty serious about what they say on Twitch. This person actually cares and can put together something that looks like this. Or, yeah, I have sort of my other flyers here. I have my Twitch videos. Let's see, what else do I have? Yeah, I have some. I'm trying to think about some posts that are a little bit more relevant for you guys. Yeah, like I might share some like an article that I just found interesting. Like I shared this article. Maybe I had a survey. So yeah, that's how people can leverage. I know I'm like overkill answering your question. There I use, but that's kind of how it's used. Okay. Um, yeah. Oh, hey, Lennon, that's a great one. Yeah, I really like Lennon's comment, and maybe we can wrap up with that comment. Thanks, Lennon. I think that template is just fine. Like you can use that, incorporate anything that you like. Just have a template ready to go. You're going to want to have some sort of copy and paste activity, because yeah, you can incorporate like Lennon's plus mine in some way, but just something that has a question. Like always have a question mark is my number one thing. I didn't talk about this, but there's a psychology behind using a question mark. People feel like they have to respond if you use a question. So always have a question in whatever email you write or whatever connection request you write, because people feel like they need to respond, or at least it creates more of a like you're more likely to get a response when there's a question mark there. Literally, I'm literally just going to draw it in here, like literally throwing this somewhere on your message like increases the response rate of anything that you ever do. Like seriously, this is like beyond a doubt one of the most things I've learned in my time. All right, guys. Well, I'm way past my welcome. Thanks for thanks for you all for sticking on with me, and thanks to the organizers for dealing with me for way past time. I want to before I pass it back to, I guess I'll pass it back to Macy before we wrap up. But what I want to say is thank you all so much. This was so fun. You guys were like dancing on the dance floor with me. So I really appreciate all the activity and everything you've done. Feel free to connect with me. Like my link is down there below to check out or check out what you can do to connect with me. But other than that, guys, thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Macy. I think you're muted. Sorry. All right. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.